You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Owen.
I'm Warlord Scarr, according to a council of many mix.
Absolutely. And today, we are here to be the prognosticators of the RPG world and cast our scrying lens far into the future to determine what 6th edition Dungeons & Dragons might or might not look like. So, we're going to talk about 6th ed D&D, what we think is going to happen, what we might hope to happen, and probably a lot of what we fear is going to happen. So Shane, you've had this idea percolating in your head for quite a while, and I hate 5th ed D&D, so we should get some fertile ground out of this. What are you thinking? What are your thoughts?
I think that's quite possible. Yeah, I have a list of, I think this would be good if they did this, and then there is the list marked as most likely, which is horrifically cynical. But let's go back to the first thing you said there. Is just like, how far in the future can we expect 6th ed to be?
I would say a few years. 5th ed has been unaccountably successful. They didn't expect it to be this successful. And as a result, they've kicked back whatever plan. Like, I think normally by this time, 6th ed will be out in a year or two. By their normal cycle of releases. But 5th ed has been so successful that there's no reason to upset the apple cart. And like they're not sure why 5th ed is so successful. So they don't want to change stuff that they don't know why they're winning. So why change anything? Just let it run on for a while. They're not having to put in a crazy amount of effort. So why upset the apple cart? 6th ed will come when pressure from above comes that we need to do a new run of core books to make a bunch of money with. We want to sell everybody we sold the 5th ed, PHB, DMG and Monsters Manual to. We want to sell that to them again. We want everybody to buy a new set of books. So that's going to be... and the pressure will come from above. It'll be financially led pressure, I would say, to go... You need to do a new edition because we need to do have this big sales spike. So away we go. And that's, I think, is the main thing that will trigger it.
Yeah, but according to the latest figures, D&D is still growing year on year. And of course, that depends on whether you count growing as people who have bought a book or people who have looked at D&D Beyond once. So...
That is
hard to know.
It's very difficult to penetrate. Like, you get press releases about it, but press releases can be made say anything. So, like, whatever. It will happen when they want a big sales spike, when they want to make a bunch of money one year. When they need to. They might be looking to sell the company, they might be looking to do something else ambitious, and they will want a big sales figures. I would say that will be the driving factor of when it happens, because otherwise the edition is incredibly successful, so you don't want to mess with that. So it'll happen when there is pressure for a big sale, effectively.
Yeah, 5th ed has been so successful, but I feel like after 7 years, it's starting to creak a little. The particular thing is you can say when it started creaking, but certainly the whole thing about the new format for races and stuff like that has shown that, there's places where there's a bit of pushback. Like the design isn't failing, the simplistic part. I'm sounding so cynical already, but there's enough pushback. I feel like things are starting to rattle. I would not be shocked if the next big revision isn't a new edition, but they call it like 5e revised or 5e new frontier or something, and it's basically 5.5, where it's basically just an overhaul. and you said it, core books, as you just said. I certainly get a lot of things like 6th ed speculation has been growing over the last while, it seems, and so has a very interesting counter movement of the 4th ed revivalist movement. Like this has come up the most actually, is that people are glorifying the 4th ed Dungeon Master's Guide over anything in the 5th ed Dungeon Master's Guide. The 4th ed Dungeon Master's Guide did a better job of onboarding is how it goes.
Yeah.
It's just like, and this is what it's an interesting argument because they're basically saying that, well, the 4th ed DMG was better for new DMs, and thus that is the kind of DMG we should have got. But I'm not sure that's an argument for doing that now, because we've got all the new DMs. They've horribly failed upwards into the role of DM, as you do, and, you know, watched a whole bunch of videos by various YouTubers. I don't know if it feels like that's more they're talking about a missed opportunity of making a good DMG rather than a peek into the future. Although, you know, growth is growth, so it is something to keep in mind.
The 5th ed DMG, I wasn't impressed by, but whatever. The spiritual successor to 4th ed D&D is Pathfinder 2nd ed. That's where the spiritual successor of it is. In terms of being took a bunch of good lessons from Pathfinder, took a bunch of good lessons from 4th ed, combined them into a very gameable product. I'm a big fan of Pathfinder 2nd ed. The approach of 5th ed is not very gamist heavy or mechanics heavy. So 4th ed would be in very much its antithesis in that regard, because 4th ed made the settings serve the mechanics. That ain't happening again in the next edition of D&D. That ain't happening again at all. You know? And there's a number of conceits in 4th ed D&D. Like, people always accuse, it's like an MMO. There's bits where it's like an MMO. For example, the leveling the monsters, the way they did it, and they kind of had like nearly zones where this is the level 25 zone. That definitely, and Pathfinder 2 has that to an extent as well, but they try and be more careful about how they put it together. But like that, the kind of zoning of content, and again, that like 5th ed would not play with that. That's not how they think. That's not how they, by and large, play. You know, I know that people are mystified by the challenge rating system in 5th ed as being okay. So this intellectual hour is a fine opponent for a first level party, and you're like, well, if you want them all to die, yeah, sure, you know. So it's the amount of quality D&D advice in the game itself for GMs. It's okay. It's, you know, but I wouldn't rate the 5th ed DMG as being more than okay. 4th ed better at on-ramping? Yes, because 4th ed approached it explicitly as a game and talked about game mechanics and talked about how you know, engage with those and give your players, you know, a challenge and everything else like that. That's not the way 5th ed's gone. So, yeah. Well, I mean, I think we could talk a little bit about the changes that are going to happen to races, or likely changes that happen to races, because they're almost certainly not going to be called races anymore. They can't call it ancestry, because that's what Pathfinder's done. So lineages, maybe, or, you know... I
feel like I saw...
I don't think they're going to do bloodlines either.
I think lineages would be fine for me. I feel like there was another word that they started using in Unearthed Arcana, and maybe it's in the new Ravenloft book.
You know...
But I cannot think of it off there. It might be lineages. But yeah, that's fine. I think the issue there is that there's the inherent reluctance, particularly in the 5th ed area, of defining like cultural bonuses as like the idea of, well, sure, the elf has a dex bonus. That's just sort of, a physiological thing. But they also have this proficiency in long swords and longbows, and that's because in Greyhawk, long ago, 1970s, they were a very martial culture, and so they were automatically given all these proficiencies, even though they were mostly mages. And that was the thing in Gygax's world, and it's sort of been grandfathered into all the other settings. Whereas the modern logic would be, well, no, that's not a elf thing. That's a fairy kingdom of Selene thing. That's what that culture did. So we should separate that out now. But that runs into the problem that the fifth ed paradigm is, I'm not going to say anti-setting, but very much they don't really want to sell setting. Actually, well, that's sort of changing now. They're finally, after 8 years, starting to really push settings as a major product, in a certain sense.
Well, they have to. If you want to sell adventures, you got to sell settings, because adventures aren't compelling enough on their own. They need to be an adventure in a place that you need a hook. You need to go, this is what this place is about, so the GM can get excited and invested about the idea and then sell that idea to their players. But just to talk about like the lineage or whatever it becomes thing, and the cultural versus physiological things, like the physiological stuff. Okay, what they're going to knock on the head is they don't want anything that appears to be an intelligence bonus or intelligence penalty, because they think it plays into certain human theories on IQ that are would often be associated with geneticists. Now, look, yeah, okay, I think it's silly to apply those to fantasy races, but sure, if you think that offends people, fine, toss it out. But the second you toss that out, you've dug yourself a hole, because what do races do then? Or what do ancestries or lineages do then? If you don't have plus dex minus int, or plus cha minus dex. You can't do that, and you probably have to knock it all on the head. You just go, okay, you get 2 bonuses, or you get 3 bonuses and a penalty, and you put them wherever you want. And that's fine, but then every ancestry is going to be assessed based on, okay, so what else do they get? Would they get rid of, for example, a lizard folk having some sort of scaly natural armor thing? Would they get rid of that, or would they keep that? Because if you keep that, the races will be assessed and chosen on the basis of, okay, which is the best of these sort of racial abilities, because stats don't matter anymore. And it led to a bit more kind of diversity at the table, when you would go, I want someone who's kind of smart and dexterous. I'll play an elf. And that gives your player kind of an on-ramp to that. But you're going to get rid of that because you don't want that there anymore. So it's just going to be about special abilities. So the special abilities are going to need to be better defined and slightly better balance between them. But that's going to be hard. You're going to get situations where, the best wizard is a shield dwarf, because they get armor or whatever themselves. They can wear heavy armor without penalty. So yeah, you can just wear heavy armor as a wizard. So everyone plays shield dwarf, and you'll get those complaints because they will be the best choice. And some players, when they start out new, will ask questions like, "What's the best pick?" And if the GM, pick whatever you want, then they just go online, check, it's Shield Dwarf. And, cool, I'll be with Shield Dwarf Wizard. And then people will be upset about, why are all the wizards Shield Dwarves, Or something like that. That's the difficulty you're going to have when you get rid of the stat bonuses. So you need to have a lot more diversity of option in the special things. Now, you're talking about the cultural stuff as well. The cultural stuff can probably stay, but again, you're going to have to balance those roughly. So there's a diversity of choice. There should be a reason why a wizard goes to each one of the classes. What I would do, which is what they won't do, but what I would do is I would make alignment give you a series of mechanical choices. That, here's how I do it. Chaotic Evil, for example. If you're a chaotic evil character and you include an ally in your attack, you would get a bonus to damage and to hit. So the whole thing would be, for me, if a chaotic evil wizard casts a fireball and it hits their allies as well, it does more damage. And I would look at it, I would do that. And I would look at a way, okay, let's have 4 or 5 different effects you can have and let the people pick them. And then they would feel a bit more like, oh, I'm a chaotic evil wizard, you know? And I get bonuses from doing chaotic evil stuff, like sacrificing, this is the optimal placement for a fireball, but I'm in it. Yes! You know? And I would do it. I would do it like that because they've tried to de-emphasize alignment, which is weird to me because alignment is one of the best known things about D&D in nerd culture. The people who've never played D&D know alignment charts.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's weird that you're running away from it when you don't have to approach it as necessarily a personality test or some weird ass thing. You actually go, this is in some way your mythic alignment to elemental forces in the D&D setting. Because those elemental forces literally exist in D&D. There are pure poles of pure chaos and law and evil and good. You know? They exist. There are creatures that are born from that pure chaos or pure evil chaos and pure lawful evil. They exist in the setting. And you could do something around, well, those players are influenced by or tied to those powers in a little way, and they get different abilities as a result. So a lawful good fighter should feel different to a chaotic evil fighter.
Yeah, I get that, but I think that the issue there has been that the alignment poles, as it were, are very tied to the Great Wheel cosmology that Gygax and then I suppose Ed Greenwood and the Planescape people sort of championed, and that's sort of not Fifth Ed's wheelhouse, which is a lot more freewheeling.
Yeah.
About settings. That's just like, if you have a cool idea for how demons and elementals work in your setting, go with that. Design your own setting. And that's sort of where the friction between alignment as elemental forces and my setting, I have made it to so beautiful, sort of happens. People, like, in order to have this system where, like, literally, I am a level 3 fighter, that means that the gods who are closest to me in personality are now paying attention to me and judging my alignment like they were in First Ed. For that paradigm to happen, you have to have the mechanical weight of, this is how the planes work, this is how the spells interact with the planes work. And a lot of people now see that as sort of limiting on their setting ideas. So they're like, no, I have this cool idea for how each of the other dimensions are based on a metal or a platonic element or Chinese myth or something like that. And alignment doesn't have the same sort of plug and play design-iness that people want settings to have. I feel like a lot of the modern Fifth Ed audience sort of wants more Lego bricks as regards setting and mechanics. I feel like they would possibly prefer to have more optional rules than, straightforward rules. Something that they can say, well, in my setting, this rule is in play, this rule is in play, this rule is in play. Maybe I'm reaching there, but I think that might be...
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to that. That they will be reluctant to do anything like that. But I mean, that's a thing I do. I don't think they'll do it at all. But it's what I do. Because I think additional accesses of choice into building your character are cool. And they basically give rise to a bit more disparity in play. Especially when you're probably going to narrow things with the change to lineages, I think. And there's a certain... I'm being a certain amount cynical there, but I think that's the way it's going to go. I think they're going to end up narrowing it either deliberately or by accident. They're going to boil it down to X is the best fighter. I think.
Yeah. That's something to worry about. Do you want to talk about general mechanics?
Sure.
And whether you think there's going to be any fundamental changes.
They have to make fundamental changes to make people buy the new books. You can't have a situation where you can just use your 5th ed books with 4 or 5 sticky notes. They have to change a bunch of stuff. And what can't they change? Well, they can't change ability scores because people are used to ability scores and it's too hard to get people to change. So you're going to have to change some other crucial bits. Now, what you change, I'm not sure. You might pull some of the complexity out of it. I don't know.
What complexity is left? Other than the spells?
You could get rid of skills.
Maybe?
You could get rid of skills.
That doesn't really seem like a change, though. That doesn't really seem like... That just seems like... that just seems like you're just hand-waving, ability checks into doing more.
You'd basically probably give them different proficiency-ish sort of ranks. And this is your social, this is your mental, maybe do something like that. You have to change something. Maybe not get rid of skills, but you'd have to do some stuff that would fundamentally change it. Spells would be a good place to start, but I think people have if you cut Fireball, I think you get in trouble. If you cut Magic Missile, I think you get in trouble. So I think they would be reluctant to do that, but I think they would look to pare down the complexity a bit further. I'm not sure where you go for that, but yeah, I think they would do that.
There just doesn't seem to be much complexity to cut. Is the thing the main thing is things that aren't intuitive. I feel like in an ideal world, ability scores is where you would axe. You would go down, all right, you have a +1 in this, a +3 in this, and a +0 in this, -1 in this one, and there's no rolling. Or if there is rolling 46, it's on a chart. It's not your strength is 18. It is you have rolled an 18 on the strength chart, your strength is +4. That's what I would do, but I understand sacred cows are a problem.
You see, the problem is that you will want to preserve certain things as D&D aesthetic, despite the fact that they're not terribly important mechanically. Like, if you change over to ability mods, it doesn't change the game. It actually cuts out a stage. But aesthetically, 18 strength is important. Why it's 18, I could not tell you. But anyway.
Because
3d6... That's a brilliant reason, Shane.
It's Gygaxian gives a brilliant reason. Everyone has been, tossing him off for the last 30 years.
So, aesthetically, there are things you have to maintain because aesthetics is what matters. You can hear the condescension dripping off my voice. But aesthetic matters about this. So they'll look to pare down some complexity. You're probably right about spells being the place they go to. I think monsters will become a lot simpler because monsters are a bit of a mess at the moment, where most of them are really simple and the spellcasters are really complex. So they might cut spellcasters down to basically bolt, blast, save or suck, heal.
Yeah.
You can probably cut them down to 3 or 4 or 5 special abilities. And basically put a little bit of description in the special ability about how it works, like movement spell, bolt, single target spell, multi-target spell, save or suck spell, and regenerator defensive spell, and basically put them this is what this does, and maybe the defensive spell just adds hit points, and you flavor it as whatever you like. It's a shield. It's, I have multiple images or something, and that's how it basically works. To make it a bit easier for the GM to run. I think that's maybe where they'd go. Because if you look at the difficulty between running a storm giant versus running a lich in D&D 5th ed, which is harder for the GM to run?
The lich all the way.
All the way.
Spells.
Because a million T spells. Literally a million T spells. So if you can cut that down to... They have all these spells. Because what's the difference between Fireball and Lightning Bolt, really?
Line versus boom.
Line versus cone. And you could basically just boil that down to blast cone. You rather than have to go, I have to look up Lightning Bolt, you know? Or you go, hard wilting. Let me look up hard wilting, you know? You can probably boil it down, make those simpler to use so the monsters are more accessible and easier to run for the GM. There's a place where you could trim a lot of complexity.
Do you think they would change away from the natural language that they use in 5th ed back towards mechanical language in 4th ed? Or are we more likely to see a 3rd ed situation where it was like a sort of 50-50 mix?
They'll do natural language because it's easier. It's
easier.
Yeah, it's easier to write.
It's easier, but it's bloated.
Absolutely. But that's great. Increases word count. More pages, you know? Less writing you actually have to do. I'm super cynical about this one, Shane, because I felt the 5th ed was a very cynical project that succeeded massively. So why not double down? They would keep going with that. They would not go to a rigorous mechanical language that is maybe a little uncomfortable to read, but is sterling in play. You know? They will not go to that. They will go to natural language stuff because it reads a bit better and it's easier to write. They will go to that.
I didn't have time to write you a good PHP, so I wrote you a long PHP instead.
Yeah. And hey, word count matters because that means your book's bigger. That means you can charge more for it. You know, like you will get into trouble if you're charging whatever $50 for a PHP that's 100 pages shorter. Oh no, you're getting in trouble doing that. But for charging $80 for PHP that's 50 pages longer, here we go. That's how you make the money, Shane. You know? Because at some point the price of RPG books is going to have to go up because it's been kind of stagnant or certainly stuck for a while.
You say that, but like I'm a Savage Worlds fan. I'm a big believer in the idea of, you know, you can make a cut down version for... You can have multiple price points for the same usability of book, but that's a very
the €8 core book was a once-off. Savage Worlds Explorer Edition was apparently a once-in-a-lifetime deal they randomly got, and every one of those books was from the same printing. They got one deal for a crazy number of books, and they said, "Oh my god, let's just print like thousands of these," and then they sold them off after a year, and that's why they had to do the new edition, was because they said we can't. Everyone go, why not just print this? They're like, oh, we can't get that deal again. We got it once, that was it.
Should I start listing off my positive list?
Absolutely.
Because let's go through positives. Okay, so my positive list would be revised spells. As I said, my idea would be more spells will be turned from it uses my spell slots for the day to being rituals. Like there's a very specific separate list of rituals of things you do, skill challenges, ways other members of the party can help out. You know, maybe they spend hit points or do a performance check or something, and that makes all the weird and crazy spells that they haven't been able to kick out of the book yet. It makes them into something useful and interesting, but they don't take up like combat magic essentially. Then you can say villains use a very different spell system. They don't have to use slots. They don't have to abide by the spell levels that the players do. You can assume that they are doing forbidden magic that no sane player would ever do. And more diverse immunities. Like it's not that like this guy is immune to 57 things and this guy just has a lot of hit points. It's going to be stuff like someone might be like when they would be paralyzed, instead they get slowed or stuff like that. Stuff like half immunities so that you can use more effects, but they don't necessarily all work out the same way. That's sort of one place I would go. I mean, think that's possible?
I mean, rituals work well as terms of going, here's your combat magic and your non-combat magic. It's a fine change. It's relatively easy on the complexity. So yeah, that'll be a good change. I don't know if they do it, but it's a good change. for the other players helping out. Yeah, again, good stuff. I mean, be a positive change if they made it. So yeah, it's good.
XP systems is a difficult one because the I've gone over XP myself in a previous episode, and there's very very simple reasons why the level up whenever system has become ubiquitous. I still do think that they should outline different options for things like if they're going to have a better DMG, and we're going to hope that they do in this scenario, that they should really put out, well, here's what all the different XP systems, killing monsters, getting treasure, some kind of three-pillar system based around social combat exploration. Just give options and explain what the ramifications of each option are. I think that's where XP systems is going to fall down. It's like, what does it mean if you're just saying you level up when you do X? What does that mean for the game, the pacing, and your players? I think that would be valuable page space spent.
Yeah, I mean, I know I did a huge amount of milestone leveling in, say, Pathfinder 2nd Ed for ages, and it was grand. It conforms very closely to the expectations of the module, which is good in the pre-published stuff. We actually did, for Abomination Vaults, our GM actually calculated the XP from all the encounters and started paying us on a per encounter basis because the way the adventure is arranged, it's a mega dungeon. And it meant that we could do a few extra quests which gave bonus XP before we went into a boss fight to make the boss fight a little bit easier. And to basically pop a level. Okay, we'd be 5th at the end of this, but if we do all these side quests, we'll be 5th going into the fight. And it'll be a lot easier as a result of that. And so we did that, and that was good, because that gave you a choice. That empowers you a little bit, because it gave you a feeling of choice. And that's good sometimes. So I think Milestone, it will be the default because it's easy. But having another option would be good, because then the players can make choices that kind of empower them. Kind of knowing, well, we're not leveling to 5 until we kill this ghoul, so let's go kill this ghoul.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wanted to. I feel like there should probably be a revision of the resting system.
Yes, go on. But go on.
This is possibly the most hopeful of my thoughts, but I feel like going back to the 4th Ed resting system might be an overall better choice. So to take the emphasis off we run away and rest for 8 hours, and go back to just 10-minute quick break, drink of water, put on some bandages and keep going. I feel like that might be a better option. And also, I feel like we should introduce more uses for the hit dice system. Like, the hit dice and previously healing surges were, I think, an interesting system, but they're not really being used to their fullest extent in 5th Ed. I feel like a system where, say, instead of exhaustion, you spend one of your hit dice. Maybe a starting first level character has 2 hit dice, and they have to make choices. This is right, do we want to recharge after this fight, or do I take exhaustion, or stuff like that. I feel like you can make a more interactive system there.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, you definitely could. I mean, I think as is, hit dice, if you're a character, you can keep falling over in every fight, and someone just spends a minor action to cast Cure Light on you, and you pop back up. And you just go boop, 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 boop. There's no consequence. Because you actually really can't get killed by that. As long as you're not getting to the point where you have to make a death save. You're not going to die from that. Once you pop up, hey, everything's good again. So at a certain point, I think the players become probably a bit too tough currently in 5th Ed D&D. I know some people have accused them of that. At first level, you can die to any crit. Basically, just take it straight to dead. But from that point on, so long as some people with cures are still up, you're fine. You're not gonna. The people with cures go down, you're in trouble. But other than that, you're grand. So doing some more stuff about to cap how much healing you can get would be interesting, but curtails the day. Whereas if you make everything more about short rests, you guys can go forever, more or less, which might be what some groups want. But there are issues around wizards having I need long rests versus some classes who only ever need short rests and in fact don't want a long rest at all. They want to basically just keep short resting, And there are conflicts in groups where some people go, oh, don't play a monk in that group. You'll want a short rest all the time, and none of them want a short rest. So you're basically end up fighting with the party about that. So maybe they move to a situation where everyone has short rest and long rest abilities again. I don't know if they would though, but they could do that.
Certainly, I think they should think about this whole system because, the long rest, short rest thing is. It keeps promising to be a solution to issues, but ends up being fiddly in all those little ways. So I do think that is one place they need to take a good long look. One thing I have down here is more mechanisms, more mechanics to give information to players. This is something that really annoys me, is that nothing has a fixed DC anymore, or very few things. And there's no good way for a GM to say, well, does the wizard know what a golem is? It's just this is the, ask your GM problem. It's well, maybe the GM doesn't have any guidelines. And I feel like mechanics for going, well, this is what your knowledge means. And I know some people don't like it because, again, it's the setting, it's the mystery element, and they don't want to say, Bobby has Arcana, so he obviously knows that you use fire on trolls. I know some people don't like that, but I feel like having a mechanic that you can fix or take out is better than just throwing a GM in and having to make them do all the calls as regards kind of thing.
This is taken care of with 8 characters in every monster slot book, which could be Arcana, DC, 20.
Yeah, it could.
That's what it does in Pathfinder. Works really well.
Yeah, and they did it in 4th Ed, and now, because of the giant stat block and the little bit of fluff and that 1 page per monster in the monster manual, they don't have space to put that in anymore.
No, you could squeeze that in.
People complain.
You can squeeze that in. That's not even a line. It's really not.
Yeah.
It could be a line for clarity, but it doesn't have to be. It can be right beside its senses, because that's the first thing you're going to interact with it about. And you just explicitly make recalling knowledge. This is what Pathfinder does. Recall knowledge is a one action check, and it's a blind roll, so the GM makes it for you. So you find, and you basically get a piece of information, which might be right, might be wrong. If you crit fail, you get a really wrong piece of information. If you crit succeed, you get a really accurate piece of information. It works well. But you can do that as a minor action DnD, what do I know about this monster? And that is really good for new players and experienced players who are like, wait, is this the type of mold that grows when I put fire on it? Or the type of mold that fire kills? GM, what do I remember?
Yeah.
Now, some people dislike players who go in knowing the whole PHB, or the whole monster manual. Fine, whatever. But systemizing it so the players can ask about vulnerabilities is a good thing. Because a good dangerous monster should have a weakness. Really dangerous monsters with no weaknesses aren't very fun to fight. They're just a dangerous slog. It's what's this guy's weakness? And that should be a question in your monster design. And the guy with no weakness should be an exception. Because then it's special that he has no weakness. What's this guy's weakness? Nothing. He has no weaknesses. That should be special. every monster should have a weakness, because then a player can ask the GM a question about the world, get an answer, and come up with a solution. Even so much as they're cowardly. What does that mean? Their will saves suck. And all of a sudden, players have different options. They can think, oh man, I'll cast the fear spell on these guys. Whoa, wow, that was really effective, or whatever. It's all about letting players, when they're playing, encounter the world and learn things about it. And once you go, oh, kobolds are cowardly, I cast a fear spell and they all ran away. And that's a little bit of world building and exploration that nests itself in the player's mind. But the player being able to ask the GM the question to get that hint about what to do. If they didn't know that, they'd maybe never cast a fear spell and they wouldn't know. But they found that out, they did it, and they feel they've discovered something about the world. And that's good. That's good. So do that.
Yeah. Do you suspect that the next edition will have more character options or try to curtail them? Because this is sort of this weird thing where I feel like there's half the 5th Ed people that says there's too many different kinds of characters and half of them say there's not enough. I suspect it's more that there are too many classes, but there's not enough ways to customize them, or at least not to the extent that the customizers want.
You're finished making choices at level 3. You're finished making choices at level 3 unless you're a spellcaster. That should concern people. That should concern you.
Yeah.
If you're not using the feats, which are an optional rule, you're done making choices at level 3. That should concern people.
Yeah.
Maybe games only go to level 5. I don't know. I played at level 20. So, my experience is not their experience. I would say that they might curtail... You see, the problem is that what are those class specializations called?
Subclasses?
Subclasses, yeah.
Subclass.
The subclasses, if they cut down on the number, in the core book, they had 3 of each one, didn't they?
Yeah.
You can't really go much lower than that, because that's the only choice. That's the only... After you pick your class, you pick your subclass. That's kind of it. You're done for choices. And having only one choice would feel really lame. So they can't really go much lower. If they're reducing down races or ancestries or lineages or whatever to just picking the one which gives you the special ability you want, you've reduced the complexity in character creation quite a bit. Do you just do a raise then? I think you have to do a raise at that point, right?
Well, what I would suspect is that they would take, instead of a subclass system, they could have a set of character options. Instead of you gain your subclass is picked at level 3 and gives you something at level 6, 9, 12, whatever. Instead, you would have each at level 3, level 6, level 9. You get a pick from a list of powers. I think that would be the smarter way to go to give people more flexibility and options to look forward to.
Would wizards still exist under that? Because if your plan involves wizard not existing, it's not a runner.
Well, as a known wizard hater, I might be biased in that regard.
Yeah, but they're not going to get rid of the classes.
I know.
Classes are too simple and easy. No, they would not get rid of classes. They might do stuff with effectively they might try and make multi-classing a bit more you pick some special abilities from a different class and you get them. But, they might do some stuff with multi-classing, but because that's the biggest avenue of optimization left, other than play a spellcaster. I can't see them getting rid of classes because they're that's too easy to start a civil war on. No more wizards,
Yeah.
Oh, world's on fire,
Yeah. Going back to the thing you were talking about, third level PCs are too tough and first level PCs are too fragile. Do you think that maybe the power curve might be adjusted so that people are not going to like this because it's what fourth ed did, but like have a really high, can't be killed in one hit starting HP, but then the power gain per level is a lot lower. Do you think that's a starter?
I don't think they'll change it because I think they think it's a feature, not a bug. I think you being really easy to die at the first couple of levels they see or the first level is a feature. That this makes the game dangerous. It feels dangerous. And that stops feeling dangerous at all. But anyway, but it felt dangerous the first level.
I feel like what they're asking for, I don't know. I have theories about hit points and danger that is possibly reserved for another episode. Do we want more Magic fighters or Hollywood fighters? Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think the single issue Magic user voters are going to win out again?
I think they'll win out again because some people want the fighter to be I roll dice, I am done with my turn. Some people want that, but are those people wizard players or fighter players? They're wizard players, but they think the fighters do this. This is like, I think this 1 in 20 players is so disengaged from combat they just want to hit something with an axe, and that is the extent of their interest in the interaction. I actually think that's best suited towards the barbarian playstyle, but the barbarian is actually generally has a bit more going on than the fighter does. So just weirdly, but there you go. I think the fighter will be kept in as the basic fighting man, or woman or whatever, but they'll put a subclass in for Magic to give them access to some special abilities, which will be just reflavored spells or just actual spells. Much like what they did with Monk, which is a poor class that has one good feature, and that basically is played because it has one good feature.
Do you hold on? Let me just. Do you expect the game will go more physical or more digital? Do you think we're finally going to get the fourth ed character creation tools online that we were promised in 2009? Or do you think we're going to? Or do you?
You'll be able to buy them. You'll be able to rent them. It will be a subscription service or you buy a year's license. That's what you'll get. Because it's the most money for the least effort. And what they'll do is they'll release content on that once a month or whatever. And you being subscribed to that will get you that content.
Do you think?
And then occasionally...
Do you think that there'll be a de-emphasis on buying books at all, or?
Oh no, they'll want you to buy the books as well, and they'll put content that you only get in the books. But they'll sell you the book PDF as well. But if I wanted to sell people a digital subscription, that's how I do it. Every month there'd be a new subclass or a new spell or something like that, and away you go. And then everyone has to say subscribe for the thing. If I want to be really evil, you can't. If you're subscribed when it comes up, you get this thing unlocked. If you're not subscribed when it comes up, you can buy it at a premium. Reward loyalty. If I was looking to make money, that's what I'd do. And you think I'm being negative about the money thing, but if you look at what they're currently doing with Magic the Gathering, which is what you're doing, they're trying to squeeze a lot more money from a top end of player, a whale player class. That's what they're doing in Magic, and they're being quite successful, but they're burning out a certain strata of player doing it. And I can see them doing some luxury playstyle stuff. So a digital offering is good, but physical offerings you can sell more tap to. So there will be still be reward and a focus on in physical play, because you can sell them custom dice and custom play mats and custom dice rolling mats for your expensive custom dice. And that's important because you can sell people kind of a lifestyle aspirational thing with it, like your dice tower or your mini or whatever else. And being able to sell people that stuff is important for increasing revenue and increasing the amount of revenue you extract from each person. Which is, like, that's what they're doing in Magic. They're increasing the amount of money they extract from each player. And they're doing it a couple of different ways, but they're doing a lot of that around just basically going, this is an exclusive release, this is this expensive box, this is all this other stuff. And they're partly getting that funded by investor class players who are looking to invest money in cards and save them, which there's been an explosion of over the pandemic. And you can't do exactly the same thing with D&D, but you can do some of the same things. And cosmetic stuff is relatively cheap to do, relatively easy to do, but has a potentially very high markup. So you might see them seeing if they could sell people on gaming and costume. Maybe.
Okay, well, that's an option, I suppose. But I'm more thinking,
well, if you're streaming, it makes you more visually interesting to look at.
Most streams do not have that many players. I don't know if, I'm nothing against official D&D branded LARP gear. That's not an issue. It's just like, I'm not sure the market for it is that big, but you know, if they want to go into costuming, I'm not going to stop them. But I'm more thinking about, like, this is me going back again to the formatting thing. This is like, are they going to keep on the train of every book is this glossy hardcover that costs €50 or whatever, or should they?
Absolutely.
But
Shane, you're making what's the markup on a big, giant, glossy hardcover book?
I'm not saying they're not profitable. They're obviously profitable. I'm saying there's a huge number of people they can't sell that to because they have €20 of pocket money a month. This is like,
well, I guess they better save up for a couple of months. Shane, they're gonna try and extract as much value as they can from people,
but
they will put.
I'm just saying that if they want to get more permanently, they should have multiple price points. Like, just have softcover versions as well. Like, and get the softcover market as well as the hardcover market. Like, I don't see why is shelf space in game stores that tight that you need to have your giant glossy hardcover to stand out.
Yeah, Shane, why aren't they currently doing record sales, and people are buying the hardbacks? Why would they go to a cheaper paperback? Because it'd be nice. People are finding the money to buy the stuff. So as far as they're concerned, mission accomplished. Would it be nice? And the release schedule is also not aggressive enough to burn most people out with the hardcovers. But, like, they don't need to go to softcovers. They don't need to go to softcovers at all, and they can charge more for the hardcovers, so they're going to keep charging for the hardcovers. You're annoyed at my cynicism, but that's what it is. That's how it works.
They could be making more, though. So they could be selling little things, like
if you
many adventures.
If you produce cheaper to buy in products, there is a danger of devaluing your product, and people won't pay as much for it then. They found that this is a weird thing, but they found that in ticket sales for live events, that if you reduce the price, you reduce the amount of money you make because less people come to the events because they're not seen as being as big a deal. If you're only paying €10 for your ticket, you're like, oh, this must be dodgy. You'll pay 60 or 70 happily, but you'll be worried about paying 10 because 10's too cheap. So they found if they raised prices on live events, sales didn't go down at all. That people instead were like, yeah, that's cool, sounds good. You know? People pay €100 to watch a boxing pay-per-view, which might be terrible, and in fact it usually is terrible, but they'll pay €100 for it. You know? It doesn't seem rational, but that's the way people work.
I get that. It's just like a lot of our cynicism and resentment towards Fifth Ed, such as it is, that comes from the fact that they are the dominant market force, yet have no responsibility to the market. They have no ability. They have no requirement on them to say, "Hey, if you don't like D&D, you should check out Blades of the Dark or Pathfinder or thing." They have no need to do that, and all discovery is put on the backs of the players who are trying Fifth Ed and not liking it. And like, they're offering other things technically by having previous editions on the DM's Guild, but they're responsibility, I guess, is where a lot of the things I feel like WotC are missing as the D&D owners. But that's the corporate world for you right these days.
They are the happiest when they are in a monopoly without being technically a monopoly. That is when any company is happiest. There is technically other options available to you, but in reality, you just use us because we're the best. It's a bit like, being Amazon or being Steam or being anything, being massively dominant in the area. There are technically other options, but in reality, there's not. And we're perfectly happy with that. They would see no reason to change that whatsoever, Shane. No reason at all.
One last question, just a bit of bulletin.
Absolutely.
Do you think the next edition will be modular, or will it double down on being a tighter core experience? Do you think they will embrace there's Hellboy 5th Ed and there's Stargate 5th Ed? Do you think they will actually put that in as a thing, as like you can adjust your campaign any way you want? You can break this rule and that rule and take out this alignment system or whatever. Do you think that's likely, or are they going to double down on having very simple core mechanics and hope that people will rule?
I think they will do very simple core mechanics, and if anyone else wants to do heavy listing to integrate some other modules, that's fine. But they're not. They won't do it as a standard. They might, if they're doing some specific other settings, they might let you plug in some more complexities, or at least some module space in there to plug stuff in, because that's fine. It lets you sell more books. They might do that, but I would say they would keep the core fairly simple. Probably keep, like, the whole optional thing was kind of D&D your way sort of philosophy. So they'll stick to that nice simple core. And then if other people want to put in optional plugins, great. I would say they will keep it as simple as they possibly can, simplify it wherever they can, cut down the complexity, but you still need some complexity to sell new books, so they will leave certain places to where, okay, we'll do new subclasses, we'll do new spells, and that's the place where you can click on other modules pretty easily, And they might do some stuff for multiclassing. I'd say they might muck with that a little bit, and they might make spells easier for monsters. They might try and do spells easier for players as well, but we'll see. It's hard to say what design decision they'd make there. But yeah, I'd say they keep it simple as they can because it's sold well. So absolutely.
Do you have any optimistic thoughts, like what, you wish upon a genie to make D&D good again? Would you?
The best thing that could happen for it would be a collapse in its popularity. That there's this basically exodus away from it into other parts of the hobby. Okay, the situation is bad, Shane, because A, you've got one company with massive financial reserves on top of things. In human history, that has never been a good recipe for the consumer. Right? One company who's unquestionably dominant 100 times the size of the next company, 1,000 times the size of the next company, in terms of resources, in terms of player reach. That's never good for smaller systems and smaller players. It's just never good, right? So the current situation is bad, because you've got to, all these new players coming in, you've got to find them to off-ramp them off D&D and on-ramp them onto your game. And that's incredibly difficult, because humans are innately a bit lazy and they don't want to learn a new system, and huge other bunch of problems. So you've got to find ways to on-ramp them on. You've got to find unique selling points up against a company that can bury you in terms of resources. So that's always a massive challenge for any company to try and grab some player space and try and claw yourself together. Like, I'm negative about it because I see the biggest company in a dominant position, and then there's no reason to change and innovate. There's a reason to produce new products because you can sell them, but you don't want to change the dynamic you're in. D&D doesn't want there to be other really successful RPGs. They want it to be D&D, and then there could be a bunch of little guys. That's fine. We're not technically a monopoly. Look, there's these other people. You can play other games. You know, that's but they want to be a monopoly, because why wouldn't you want to be a monopoly? You know, it's a great position to be in. There's all these regulations and laws about monopolies because they're great. You know, if there was a company that could sell us oxygen, they'd love to be a monopoly. You know, like, I'm negative about it because it's a bad position for any kind of hobby to be in, to have one dominant provider. Like, why did GW get better? It's because other companies threatened their bottom line. Other companies started to claw back some of their market share, and GW had to get better for players to try and reclaim some of it. And now that they've gotten dominant again, they're going to start slipping back into some of their negative old ways, and other companies will come along and hopefully claw a little bit back from them. You know, that's how you get them to be better for consumers. It's you have to threaten them. At the moment, is D&D threatened by anything, Shane?
Not tremendously, no. I guess I don't want to wish to pay for the crimes of 5th Ed, if that makes sense. But
it's not for the crimes of 5th Ed necessarily. It's just that 6th Ed being another massive success would be bad for us. Like, everyone's, you enlarge the industry. You don't really. You enlarge D&D. D&D is the lonely landslide. It helps D&D and it doesn't really help many other games. Like, if the numbers, I don't believe the surveys, but the numbers they're coming out with, if it's true that 80% of players are 20 or younger, right? That means they have massively expanded D&D to a completely new fan base that only knows D&D. All the old farts that played any other game, we are a tiny minority now. We're irrelevant. If that's true, you can basically just market D&D to those people, and they'll drift out of the hobby over time, and you might keep on ramping people, you might not, but then there's nobody else but D&D. There's a bunch of really small companies doing stuff to a small, shrinking audience. You know? That's not a good setup for any system. That's why I'm negative about it. It's because it's long-term bad. It's long-term bad.
Well, I don't think I can really go any further.
I'm sorry, Shane. All right. If our long-winded, hour-long rant on this topic, or possibly, in fact, long-winded two-parter rant on this topic has depressed you at all, you know where to contact us. You know where to get in touch with us. You know where to come scream at us in the Discord. You know where to call me a negative Nelly. You know where to come and give out to Shane for not talking over me more. But for the moment, this party's over.
You've been listening to The Adventuring Party. We're a ragtag collective of desperate souls, striving for truth in a world of tabletop gone mad. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter. You can email us at party@theadventuringparty.net. Although, between you and me, the best place to track us down is Discord. Check the show notes for a link. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license, which is like free, but with extra steps. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next week.